to come, they say. With ocean crashing tides, the taste of your skin, the way you looked at midnight rings on your way.
Hello there. Welcome to the Senior Scene. Your host, Verna Jones. You know, this is February. It's the month of love, and it's also Black History Month. And let me remind you, my show is being shot at the mansion of the Great Blacks in Wax Museum. And believe me, if you haven't come to see the Great Blacks in Wax Museum, you've missed a lot. So remember now, the Great Blacks in Wax Museum, 1649 East North Avenue. Please come see the wax figures that represent your history. You know, this is February. It's the month of love, and it's also Black History Month. It's amazing. This is the time when we try to pay homage and remember those Black heroes and heroines of our time. U.B. Blake.
Okay, let me cut the action.
Well, folks, that is Black History Month on the Senior Scene.
Hey, it sounds like a party going on. Ain't nothing but a house party. Now, as I look through the window of a row house in East Baltimore, I see an old man sitting at a piano. His long, narrow fingers are tickling the ivories. Sounds of happy birthday ring out loud and clear throughout the house. Suddenly, the man at the piano turns to the crowd of friends and family members who surround him, patiently waiting to hear him play more of his music, and he says to them, "If I had known that I was going to live to be 100, I would have taken better care of myself." Now, not long after celebrating this festive day, the man who was having his 100th birthday died. That man was U.B. Blake. Now, as we travel back in history, we go back to a cold February 7. The year was 1883. James Hubert Blake was born. His parents were former slaves, and both of them, oddly enough, were well educated. They both could read and write. Now, his father, John Sumner Blake, was a stevedore and a Civil War veteran. And his mama, Emily Johnston Blake, was a laundress as well as an intense disciplinarian. She was one of those who truly believed if you spare the rod, you spoil the child. Now, Hubie grew up in East Baltimore in what at that time was a rough neighborhood, but it was an integrated neighborhood, and it was on the east side of Baltimore City. Now, one could find Hubie on many days just floating around a popular downtown business hub located at Liberty and Lexington Streets. And that was not far from where the dream turned into a reality and the Great Blacks in Wax Museum was born. Meanwhile, let's be reminded that although Baltimore was a segregated city, it at that time had the largest population of free blacks in the nation. But then that's another story. Growing up, Hubie was the only one of his parents' 11 children to reach adulthood. And many who knew Hubie wondered how he did it. You see, Hubie grew up never knowing any of his sisters or his brothers. His father, on the other hand, would always warn Hubie whenever he left the house, don't you go out messing in those white folks' business. But alas, Hubie would almost always find trouble in his path. As a matter of fact, let me give you a for instance. One morning he was just innocently standing on the corner, standing across the street, watching a little boy throw a rope over what then was an electric line. And he was surprised that this young boy continued to throw the rope over the wire to try to pull it down. And finally, that boy succeeded. But when those down wires began to spark, the boy got scared and ran, leaving Hubie there alone, and the wires were just a-flailing. Now, electricity was new back then, and only the well-off could afford such a luxury. Now, those wires lit a neighborhood doctor's house, so naturally the police got involved. Now, while all of this was going on, there was a lady from the block across the street who was watching the whole thing. And when she was asked who done it, she pointed to Hubie and said, it was that mouse-faced little boy over there. And lo and behold, that's how he got the nickname Mouse long before Hubert became known as Hubie. Now, when you come back, I'll tell you more about the Sissel and Blake.
All right now, one of our heroines. Let's look at Billie Holiday.
Girly girl, sing us a song. Their eyes? You mean them, their eyes? I fell in love with you the first time I looked into them, their eyes. And you have a certain little cute way of flirting with them, their eyes. They make me feel so happy. They make me feel so good. I'm falling, I'm sorry. In a great big way for you. My heart is jumping, you started something with them their eyes. You better look out, little brown eyes, it's your eyes. They sparkle, they bubble, they're gonna get you in a whole lot of trouble. Oh, baby, them their eyes.
Oh, I can't get here. This is Mabel. My friend Mabel. Mabel. And this is my friend Annabelle. Well, Madam Nice to meet you. And this is our new friend, Miss Kate. Charmed to meet you, madam. Aren't you up everything? Thank you. Oh, good to see you. Come on in. And let me give you some of my hospitality. All right. Now you talk. Nice to have all of you here.
Thank you so much.
You come this late, so all you get is vodka. Did you like that? Oh, isn't she marvelous? One of our historic figures, the blues, Billie Holiday. Now, let's have a look at U.B. Blake, jazz, in our time.
Services in his mother's church, they would play slow funeral music in ragtime when they were returning from the gravesite. It was very reminiscent of the sounds played at New Orleans funerals. Yubi liked the ragtime sound, and he began to work with it. And he was also influenced by the music he heard every time his father would take him downtown to see the burlesque shows. Now, at the age of 12, Yubi learned to play the cornet and began playing in a small band. Now, he wasn't happy with this arrangement because, as Yubi put it, they played white arrangements and the music was full of holes. By the age of 13, Yubi had learned many skills at the keyboard. As a matter of fact,
did you like that? Did that bring back memories? lesser-known figure. This story here is absolutely amazing to me. It's Henry Box Brown, who was shipped to freedom in a box. Now, isn't that amazing? How'd you like that?
Freedom. Freedom is a thing called truth. Back many, many years ago, you might remember that my people, the African people, were brought here to this country in chains. It was a real hot trip coming across the waters. Many, many of us died before we even got to dry land. But those of us who got to dry land suffered an indignity beyond all indignities. Many of us tried very hard to escape the bonds of slavery, to reach freedom in some form or fashion. Now, I'm going to tell you about a story that might amuse you, but it was a story of one man's attempt to get himself out of the bonds of slavery into the land of freedom, which is a God-given right for all people. That man's name is Henry Brown. Henry Brown became known to a lot of people as Henry Box Brown because of the way he sat down one night as a slave and 27 hours later stood up as a free man. It's a story unlike many stories you've heard before. You've heard of Harriet Tubman, you've heard of Sojourner Truth, and you've heard of the Underground Railroad. But Henry crossed over land. Yes, he did. Now, Henry Box Brown was born in a little place called Louisa County in Virginia. Wasn't very far from Richmond. He was born in the year 1814, and he was born to a slave mama and a slave daddy on a plantation whose owner was sympathetic to slaves, to the point where he didn't abuse them as long as they kept their place. Now that was very important. You work hard, you don't give Massa no trouble, Massa treat you good. He treated my mama and daddy good. Now his son William was so impressed by the evils of slavery that during his lifetime, he set some 30 to 40 of his slaves free. Just set them free and gave them the dignity of being no longer men in chains. I remember one day on my mom and daddy's plantation, we were called to the master's sick bed. We were all so happy because we thought that if Massa died, he would give us our freedom before he died. Well, that happy was soon shattered. When we got to Massa's bed, we found instead that what Massa did was to give me to his son William, who lived in Richmond. Yes, as a young man, I was sent to Richmond to work for Master's son William. Master's son William got me a job in a tobacco warehouse, and it was a job where I could make a little money, send some nice little things home to my mama, and enjoy as best a slave could my life.
That was our dear friend, Ben Presbury. He's portrayed Henry Box Brown. Done a good job too, don't you think?
Near the town of Buckstown. Undoubtedly, one of the greatest of the Underground Railroad conductors. Strong as any man. Brave as a lion. Cunning. They called her Moses. In her heart was always the dream of freedom. She was a descendant of the Asante tribe who successfully fought the British for 20 years. And so her heart was filled with defiance. Example. Her slave master and she were in the town of Buckstown and a slave went by the door, and the master said, "Stop that slave!" Instead, Harriet barred the door. In anger, he picked up a 2-pound block and flung it at Harriet, striking her in the head. Till the day she died, she had a terrible scar on her forehead and was subjected to fits of sleeping sickness. When Harriet recovered, and she was only 13, her master farmed her out to other slave owners, where she chopped down trees, hauled wood, herded cattle and oxen, cooked, cleaned, whatever the task Harriet performed. She said that she was glad because it made her strong, because in her heart she knew one day she would be free. Now, you know, slaves were not allowed to marry. However, a free man, John Tubman, saw Harriet and asked permission to marry her. Permission granted. Soon after that, the master died, and rumor had it that the widow was going to sell all of the slaves for financial reasons. And Harriet knew then, my time has come. She asked her husband, did he want to go with her? And he laughed and he scoffed, and she said to him, there are two things I have a right to. One is freedom, and the other is death. And I intend to have one or the other. And now, here's another. Let's just look at a montage of some of our heroes who are still living that were here and fought for in the civil rights movement. Yes, wasn't that something? Oh, if you just would remember all of these names and faces that we are showing you today. How could anyone not be proud of their heritage?
The Tuskegee Airmen were an all-black fighter squadron, the 332nd Fighter Group actually, who did bomber escort, which meant they put their life at jeopardy to make sure that the B-52 bombers got home safe.
It offered me the opportunity to be a pilot. You know, I like to look back when I was a young man, I looked back and I thought about the Buffalo Soldiers, and I tried to amplify the things that they had done, and hopefully that the young persons that are coming behind now will try to amplify the things that I've accomplished.
Well, it's important for the younger generation to know, first of all, the history of the past, but mainly that in order to overcome obstacles, you have to be excellent. The Tuskegee Airmen stands for excellence. We were people who were in college, we were leaders of our group, we were athletes, we were valedictorians.
And it's men like this that help to provide the freedoms that we enjoy, and paved the way for specifically African American men to do their part in the war effort, not just World War II, but all the major war efforts that America has been involved in. And I just have the opportunity now on this to say thank you. Thank you for your service, sir, and your devotion to your country. And
for 92 years, and I hope 92 more.
92 years, that's what I'm saying. He's young, looks good, too strong. Hurting my hand, that's a whole nother conversation.
It's an honor to be a part of this experience and this journey. To be able to stand and talk to living history it's really amazing.
And I'm a little overwhelmed because the president's about to watch our movie.
He recognizes the heritage that we bring to invite us here and to see this wonderful movie, this exciting movie, is really top-notch. You will be sitting in your seat wondering what's going to happen next. You'll enjoy it.
Well, folks, that is Black History Month on the senior scene. So we want you to tune in next time. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
I said, it's in the reach of my arms. The span on my hips. The stride in my step. The smile on my lips. Now, when I come into a room as cool as you please, oh honey, they can stand up, I'll fall down on me. They fall around me like a hot They try so hard to find my inner mystery. And when I tell them, honey, they say they still can't see. I said, I'm a woman, but I'm the jump power of talk. When you see me come, you ought to feel real proud. I'm good at that. Jump. Phenomenal.